A lot of people who are unfamiliar with World of Warcraft, as well as those who are familiar with the game, can sometimes tend to toss aside Warcraft's lore as if it's nothing to really even consider. However, Warcraft is a very rich fantasy universe filled with many epic stories, characters, and amazing moments that are worth sharing, so I figured I would. This is World of Warcraft's Top 10 Lore Moments. Number 10. If you've never read the book Lord of the Clans, then I suggest you navigate yourself to your nearest bookstore and pick it up. Lord of the Clans is the story about how Thrall was raised by humans as a gladiator in Durnhold Keep, and how he eventually rallies the orcs from the internment camps, creating a new horde, our horde. While being raised by the leader of Durnhold Keep, Blackmoor, Thrall befriends a girl by the name of Taratha, who becomes his only friend who eventually will aid him in his escape from Durnhold Keep. After escaping, Thrall learns more about his people's heritage, he embraces his shamanistic path that we know him for today, and he begins to rally the orcs of the various internment camps until this new horde is created. Now War Chief, Thrall returns to Durnhold Keep, demanding Blackmoor, the man who raised him, to free his fellow orcs from the keep, and in response, Blackmoor throws Thrall the severed head of Taratha, his only childhood friend, enraging Thrall and driving him to siege the keep. Thrall and Blackmoor eventually duel 1v1, and Thrall avenges the death of his friend by killing Blackmoor. This is an amazing moment, the climax of this book, because it shows that leadership has a price, and it has a very heavy burden to carry, which Thrall had to learn the hard way. Number 9. For our next point, we have another battle between two legendary characters. On one hand, you have Uther the Lightbringer, paladin, teacher, and all around probably one of the most recognized characters in all of Warcraft lore. In complete contrast, however, you have Arthus Menethil, the one who would soon become the Lich King, someone who was a great friend to Uther as well as one of his pupils. After getting Frostmourne and killing his father, Arthus sought the urn of his father's ashes in order to transport the remains of Kel'Thuzad safely to Quel'Thalas. The only issue is that Uther, his teacher and friend, was standing in his way.
The urn holds your father's ashes, Arthus. What, were you hoping to piss on them one last time before you left his kingdom to rot?
I didn't know what it held. Nor does it matter. I'll take what I came for one way or another.
This fight between these two characters was probably one of the most emotional moments in Warcraft 3 for me, simply because of how you begin the entire campaign seeing these two characters as best friends, and then watch as they become enemies. Arthus is completely insane, and he fights Uther, a man who loves him, who respects him, who wants the best for him, and Arthus ultimately kills him. Now in-game, Uther does make some brief appearances during Wrath of the Lich King, but his presence is mostly felt today at his shrine in the Plaguelands. Number 8. In Warlords of Draenor, Shadowmoon Valley is probably one of my favorite questing zones, not for its looks, but for its story. In Shadowmoon Valley, Alliance players are allowed to indulge in the culture and the people of the Draenei before they arrived on Azeroth, which ultimately leads up to the Iron Horde attacking the city of Karabor, leading to the great Draenei defense of their capital. Now during this attack, Ner'zhul actually attempts to summon a void-corrupted Naaru named Kara. Ever since the discovery of Kara's void state powers by the Shadowmoon clan, the use of such void magic had been forbidden. Yet after breaking the old laws to become a part of the Iron Horde, Ner'zhul has the idea to use this Dark Star against the Draenei. Just as his ritual completes and all hope seems lost for the Draenei defenders, something awesome happens. Velen, the prophet of the Draenei, their leader, and really the one who has been the protector and guide of the Draenei since their fleeing of Argus, actually steps forward, sacrificing himself so that the Naaru Kara could be purified and brought back to the light. This is an amazing moment that sent shivers down my spine when I saw the cinematic, simply because of how well the Draenei culture is established throughout Shadowmoon Valley. And it's also great because Vaal Sacrifice is what ultimately allows the Draenei to drive back the Iron Horde, saving their city. Number 7. If you've ever played a Worgen character and ran through their starting zone, you played through half of the event called the Invasion of Gilnaus. The other half, however, can be seen only by playing a Forsaken character through Silverpine Forest. Ordered by Garrosh Hellscream and determined to reprove their worth again to the Horde, the Forsaken marched south on Gilnaus in an attempt to control the area that would become a major Horde port city in Lordaeron. The Gilneans were a weak people at the time, having suffered from civil war as well as the Worgen curse, leading the Forsaken to believe that conquering the peninsula wouldn't be that much of a challenge. Their plague of undeath in hand, despite the decrees against it, the war machine marched south into Gilnaus, confronting the Gilneans and the Worgen face to face. This invasion was filled with a lot of really cool characters such as Genn Greymane, Godfrey, Sylvanas, Lord Darius Crowley, and a lot more. It was also an event filled with really epic moments such as the fleeing of Dusthaven, the spreading of the Worgen curse, the revealed lore about the Scythe of Elune, and hell, even a massive Horde airship crashes in the area. In the end though, the Gilneans, the Forsaken, the rest of the Horde, and the Alliance reinforcements to the area ended in a stalemate. Many of the Gilneans fled to Darnassus to be with their newfound allies. Genn Greymane made his way down to Stormwind to be with King Varian. Darius Crowley forms the Gilnean Liberation Front, and ultimately the Forsaken failed in capturing the land they so desperately wanted. It was just a stalemate. It was an awesome questline and an awesome starting zone, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next in Gilnaus. Number 6. With all the marketing of Warlords of Draenor, Blizzard really liked to push this idea that the drinking of Mannoroths Blood was the most defining moment in all of Warcraft. It's what brought all of these different races of Azeroth and the Orcs together. It's what ultimately led to the wars against the Alliance, and we still feel the effects of it to this day, lore-wise. Blizzard's right. It is probably the most defining moment in Warcraft lore. Gul'dan's manipulation of the Orcs to drink Mannoroth's blood and become servants of the Burning Legion stands out because this moment just is the pillar that holds up like all the rest of the storylines. This moment was packed with emotion both for the characters like Gul'dan and Grom who sought conquest and war, as well as those like Duratan who stood on the side and felt his people were being used, although at the time he didn't know just how far this demon's curse would take them. Ultimately, I feel this moment belongs on any kind of lore list, because without this event having occurred, Azeroth would be a totally, and I mean completely different place for us today. And also I can say that with Blizzard's new cinematic for Warlords of Draenor, we got to see the take of what would happen if Grom didn't drink the blood. And I must say, it was pretty epic. Number 5. In the War of the Ancients book series, one of the heroes that's pulled into the past was Broxagar, an orc warrior, brother of Saurfang, who found himself sent back 10,000 years ago to this ancient war between the Burning Legion and the Night Elves. During the events of the book, Broxagar is captured by the Elves, freed by Malfurion, Illidan, and Tyrande, given a nature-blessed axe by Cenarius and Malfurion themselves, and he proceeds to kick a lot of demon ass. Ultimately, however, Broxagar does die in this big conflict, but he goes out in a style worthy of an orc battle song. As his allies attempted to close the portal that fueled the arrival of Sargeras onto Azeroth, Broxagar, realizing they needed more time, jumped into the portal itself, the axe of Cenarius in hand. He cleaved demon after demon, eventually standing atop a pile of all of their dead bodies. The amount of demons that Broxagar killed actually made Sargeras himself step forward to put an end to Broxagar's life, and that is when Broxagar did the impossible. He actually wounded Sargeras in the leg with his axe before being impaled on the sword of Sargeras. His actions and sacrifice had not only saved Azeroth, but it showed that Sargeras was not invincible. And for these reasons, Broxagar is considered to be one of the most badass and brave orcs that have ever lived. Number 4. In the book Rise of the Horde, we're told the story, as you might expect, of the rise of the Horde. In this book, we learn a lot about Draenor, the Orcs' culture, the Draenei way of life, and we ultimately watch as all of this is just completely destroyed by the Legion from afar. After drinking the blood of Mannoroth, the Orcs are obsessed with conquest against the Draenei. It is in this genocide against their people that the Draenei decide to make a final stand in their great city of Shattrath, but not in the way that you'd expect. Realizing that their people were on the brink of extinction, the Draenei formed a plan that was risky as well as pretty desperate. In order for the Draenei to survive, the Orcs needed to believe that the Draenei had been completely wiped out, or at least the vast majority of them. With this thought running through the heads of all the Draenei, multitude of Draenei volunteered to remain behind in Shattrath City to die willingly so that the Orcs might believe their race had been wiped out. Men, women, children, all blessed by the prophet to die for the greater survival of their people. This event is actually what made me really like the Draenei, because the Draenei are, at least in my opinion, the only true good race, although they do have some flaws. Needless to say though, the Orcs destroyed Shattrath, killing all those within it, and painting their faces with their blood. For the prophet Velen, this was one of the hardest decisions he ever had to make, but in doing so, the Draenei were able to survive and are a part of the events that occur in World of Warcraft to this day. Number 3. We're going to go back to Warcraft 3 again. The Burning Legion has returned for a second time, seeking again to destroy the world that they failed to raise 10,000 years ago during the War of the Ancients. The fight eventually shifts to Kalimdor, and the Night Elves emerge from their forests, take up arms against their old foe, but as they watch the forest burn and as the war continues, they realize that greater aid will be needed than just the Sentinels. Tyrande, after recovering the Horn of Cenarius, takes herself to the Stormrage Barrow Dens, and she blows into the horn, awakening the one that lies within.
The horn has sounded, and I have come, as promised. I smell the stench of decay and corruption in our land. That angers me greatly.
Malfurion Stormrage, brother of Illidan Stormrage, the Archdruid. From the moment he awakened, Malfurion had always had a presence to him, even in World of Warcraft to this day. It's because of his age, his wisdom, his mastery over nature, and how he always seems to be one step ahead of his enemy. In Warcraft 3, he was the character who literally brought the forest to life to do battle against its enemies, making him a character that is both feared and respected. Whenever Malfurion shows up, you know something big is about to happen, and when he awakens from the Horn of Cenarius, you know the Legion is screwed. Do not mess with the Archdruid, nor the lands he protects. Number 2. Wrathgate. This single word conjures up a wave of nostalgia for many WoW players, as the Wrathgate was considered to be one of the most iconic moments from the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. After questing all through Dragonblight, players were rewarded with Blizzard's first in-game cinematic that featured the Alliance, the Horde, the Scourge, the Lich King, dragons, betrayal. I mean, what didn't this moment have is the better question. The Wrathgate focused on the struggle against the Lich King, which ultimately led to the betrayal of Putris and the Forsaken, leading to the deaths of many Horde and Alliance soldiers. Even the Lich King himself was forced to retreat from the Forsaken's plague. Heroes such as Sarfang the Younger met their end, Bolvar was turned into a big fire crispy monster, and the questline led into the battle for the Undercity, which is another really cool lore moment that came from Wrath of the Lich King. All in all, Wrathgate is a place of many memories and a lot of nostalgia for players across Azeroth, including myself. Never forget those who gave their lives at Angrathar. For those who were there, we shall not. Number 1. Whew, so here we are at number 1, guys. What I consider to be World of Warcraft's top lore moment. Now, of course, this is just my opinion, and in order to tell you about it, we gotta go back to the War of the Ancients. If there's one character in World of Warcraft that I absolutely love, even though he doesn't really have much screen time in the game or in the books, it's Malorn. On one hand, you have the father of Cenarius. He's the lover of Elune according to myth, and he's responsible for the creation and nurturing of all things within nature. And during the War of the Ancients, on the other hand, you have Archimonde, the same demon from Warcraft 3, bent on setting Azeroth to the flame at Lord Sargeras' command. During one of the battles in the War of the Ancients, the powers of nature and demon both clashed when these two met on the battlefield. Malorn, breaking free of Archimonde's entrapment, took on Archimonde one-on-one, the White Stag against the Defiler. I saw this as very metaphorical, even if it wasn't supposed to be. I don't know. Despite the power of the White Stag, however, Archimonde was eventually able to take hold of the stag by the antlers, where he proceeded to actually snap Malorn's neck. Now this was a big moment for me simply because of who Malorn was. Sure, he wasn't a character with a ton of dialogue, and he doesn't really have a super deep background, but he pretty much represents what nature is. And knowing of Cenarius, Elune, and of the Druids, seeing the White Stag guardian of the forest being killed by the Defiler was not only epic, it was really sad. And for that reason, Malorn vs. Archimonde is my favorite WoW lore moment.